everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Lisa, and I will be your host for today's. And I would like to give you all a very warm welcome wherever you're joining us from. And I hope you're really having a brilliant weather as I'm having in Kent, where I am. Please do introduce yourself in the chat, and just let us know where you're joining us from today. And yes, hopefully you're having a very good start of the day. Firstly, I thought I'll give a quick intro to Charity Digital, as maybe some of you may not know us, or it might be the first time that you're joining a webinar from Charity Digital. So we're a registered UK charity, and our mission is to help other UK-based and other non-profit, really, wherever they are, help them increase their impact by being more digital. And basically, a key element of what we do is obviously providing content for charity professionals to enjoy, whether that's article, podcast, and obviously webinars, which you are joining today. Today's session is called Fundraising Forward and the Trends to Watch Out for in 2025. It is being put together by great partners from Public Interest Registry. And today we'll be joined by Vinita Srivastava, the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Public Interest Registry. Vinita will also be joined by Ellie Artoni, co-founder and Chief Creator Officer at Social Current, and Sabrina Collins-Childers, Senior Digital Strategist at Social Current. Amongst other things, we'll cover the latest trends in charitable giving and donor behaviour for 2025 and beyond. We will also see how charities can successfully engage the next generations of givers, from the role of technologies in donor engagement to innovative strategies, especially if you're a small charity. So hopefully the session will provide valuable insight and actionable strategies. That's the most important for you to maximize impact. Now, before I hand over to Vinita, Ellie, and Sabrina, I just wanted to share a few house rules and pointers for today's session. So the session is being recorded and will be uploaded to watch on demand within a week's time. Any slides that are shared, for the next 30 minutes, together with any other resource, will also be made available to you. So don't worry if you've missed anything. Closed captions are available for today's session. To enable these, you can go at the bottom of the Zoom window, click on the up arrow button next to closed captions, and then you can select show subtitles. During the webinar, we would love to hear all of your questions, so please ask them in the Q&A section, which is located on the Zoom menu bar, and the team and myself will address them at the end of the presentation, so at about 13:45, something like that. If someone asks a question that resonates with you, you can upvote it and you can just click on the thumbs up button. Finally, if you encounter any sound or image issue, please let us know in the chat, and we'll do our very best to get the session back to normal. Obviously, the chat is for everything else, and we love to hear any comments, any suggestions you have. So please leave that very open and lively during the presentation. And now, without further ado, let me hand over to Vinita, Ellie, and Sabrina. A very warm welcome to you.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. I'm Vinita, and I'm loving everyone in the chat. I love to see where everyone's joining us from. And it looks like a lot of you have great weather. So amazing. I am with PIR, and I'm joining you today from Germany. And Ellie and Sabrina are based back in the US for us today. But before we jump into our agenda, as Lisa gave a great introduction, we wanted to take an opportunity as PIR to talk a little bit in terms of fundraising and trends that people are watching, but take a little bit of time to talk about specifically influencer marketing and how nonprofits can amplify their impact. It is a space that I myself am learning about, especially as you're looking at the different donor ranges, age ranges, and habits and behaviors, and how do you begin to think about tapping into different segments, which is a critical part of of marketing in general to make sure you're set up to target different behaviors. So we're going to spend some time talking today. We just have a brief agenda, which is on the next slide. We'll go through our introductions. I would love to hear from Ellie and Sabrina because I also kind of start with this question of getting an understanding of what is influencer marketing. We want to talk a little bit about next generation giving and what that feels like. And for your organizations, like how do you begin to think about building an influencer strategy and what are the pieces that might need to go into that? Our partners over at Social Current are experts within the space, so I think we'll be able to learn a lot from them. And also, I love to hear success stories. So we're going to cover a couple of things that they've seen coming out of the organizations that they're supporting, and then time for Q&A. So as Lisa said, feel free to drop them within the Zoom, and we'd love to stay on and talk more about questions that you have at the end. So that's what we're going to run through today. So as I said, my name is Vanita Srivaslava. I'm a Senior Director of Products and Innovation, and I do strategic partnerships with Public Interest Registry. We are the stewards of the .org domain name. So we have now almost 12 million domain names registered worldwide. We maintain the highest standards to keep .org a safe space. We take the safety and security and quality of the internet domain for .org extremely seriously to ensure that our mission-driven organizations and individuals have a safe space to build their digital presence. In addition to .org, we have .charity, .foundations, .gives, .giving, and .ngo. We have a portfolio of mission-driven domains. If you have a .org or a .foundation or a .charity, we are so happy that you're in our community, and we love learning more and helping build opportunities for this community to deliver more impact. So that's a little bit about PIR, and then I'm going to shift over to Ellie and Sabrina. Do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So nice to, I guess, meet you all. My name is Ellie. I use she, her pronouns. And like Vinita said, I'm based in the US. I live in Maine, and I'm the Chief Creator Officer, which pretty much means that I just oversee all of our campaign and community work. And I'll pass it to Sabrina.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabrina. I also use she, her pronouns. I am based in Kentucky, and I am one of our senior digital strategists on the team. So I work with Ellie and the rest of our accounts team to oversee client work for many values-aligned organizations. Excited to be here today.
That's great. I'm so excited to have you guys. So I wanted to have you, and thanks for jumping the slide, to tell us a little bit about Social Current. We, for our audience, have done some partnerships with Social Current just around bringing the nonprofit community together. And I really loved some of the work and things that we saw, which is why we wanted to bring them to this audience. So Ellie, I think maybe I'll start with you to tell us a little bit about your organization.
For sure. Yeah. So we are a platform that connects nonprofits with mission-aligned creators for relationship building, brand collabs, event opportunities, and really just partnerships in general. Our goal at Social Current is to allow organizations to invest directly in people with the digital strategy work that they're doing. We were founded in 2020 because we wanted to help nonprofits reach young people more effectively. We noticed that a lot of organizations were talking about how to reach young people, but they didn't include the perspective of any young people. And so that's why we wanted to build our organization to help those organizations work more effectively when marketing online. We originally started as a social media agency, but then a few years ago, we decided to do our first influencer marketing collaboration with a national nonprofit in the US to help get out the word about the child tax credit, which is a program to benefit families with some additional assistance. And from working with one person, we sent over 10,000 people to the website to get resources. And when we realized the impact that we could have with partnering with creators online, we decided to fully shift into influencer marketing as a whole. So that's where we started. And like I mentioned before, ever since we started that agency, we decided to start building technology to help other organizations in the space do it as well.
So Ellie, make me feel really old, but quantify the Gen Z led staff or the Gen Z led. So what is that kind of age range that we're talking about?
Okay, yes. I always get confused on when the young age cutoff is, but I believe it's roughly from like 2009 to or like to a little around like 1996. So I think it's around like 15 to 29 years old.
Okay, great. And so that's like the generation that has only known a world with content and the internet and email.
Exactly. Yeah. We're natives to the online world. And so sometimes we can think through strategies that people who haven't spent as much time on the internet can see, since we're like chronically online, if you will.
Chloe Jones, your comment popped up for me in the chat, and I feel you. So I am definitely out of that age range, but this is why it's so great to have you guys here today, because it is just a different way of thinking and consuming content. So thank you. Thank you for running through your backstory. Do you want to go a little bit more into your work on the next slide, or should we shift? Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah, so like I was talking about before, we connect nonprofits to creators for impact collaborations in general. We work on a variety of issues, both nonpartisan and left-leaning. So a lot of stuff around reproductive rights, climate change, healthcare, pretty much to address all of the issues happening in the US. Last year, we did a lot of work for the election, and we reached over 350 million people. We paid out over $7.5 million to creators, and we engaged over 4,000 creators in the space. We have an impact report with a lot of our findings that I can share out after this if anyone is interested. But we just really saw the value in investing in creators as people over just investing in creators as content. So that's what our focus for this next year ahead is going to be. And we'll probably get into that a little bit later in this conversation.
No, that's really great numbers. And I know last year, especially a lot of activity and a lot of voices to be heard. So fantastic. And I think like what I would love to cover next is to just maybe 30,000 foot view, talk to us about like really what is influencer marketing. And just for me, I think from a again, dating the age perspective, it is very easy for me to not really take it seriously, I think sometimes because there's very strong associations that I have to this concept of an influencer. So I would love to kind of hear from you guys about what does that mean? How should we be thinking about it from your frame of reference?
Yeah, absolutely. So, taking a step back, influencer marketing is really just paying content creators to make content on their platforms, featuring your organization's message to amplify your goals. So, I think when a lot of people think about influencer marketing, they're thinking about selling a product. And that is certainly one side of influencer marketing, but it can also be used for social impact, which is solely where we focus. And so, yeah, Vanita, to your point, there are a lot of associations with the word influencer. Sometimes we prefer the word creator. I don't think that there's a right or wrong word, but really just people who are making content online to reach an audience that they've built trust with, who are values aligned, are the folks that you're going to want to partner with to help spread your mission. It does not have to be like just talking points or scripted content. In fact, we would advise against that. The whole point of influencer marketing is really to help harness the voice of the partners that you choose and reach their audiences who they've built trust with. So you want to invest in the people, like Ellie said, as opposed to just the content, because if you just wanted that content, you could pay for an ad. So we want to encourage folks to share their lived experiences around the issue and like really humanize the topics that we're talking about. And as I was looking through the chat, you all work on such great issues. And so there are definitely folks online who are talking about those things and have audiences who care about that. So influencer marketing just helps you leverage that. Um, Influencer marketing or creator marketing does need to be authentic to the influencer and their voice and their format. So how they're generally making content that reaches their audience, because you want it to fit well on their page. Again, if it comes across as an ad, like that is going to be a detractor from engagement and active participation with your goal. And so really harnessing somebody's voice and their format and platform, trust they built with their audience in order to help move the needle on your goals.
No, I think that's helpful. And I think I just had an aha moment that I think maybe part of the problem is the social media that I do use and the content that I do consume might be more like sales oriented to things. And I've never thought about, for example, I'm very passionate about research in pancreatic cancer, and I follow like oncologists on X or similar platforms, but I haven't really thought about where are those cancer advocates like within the social space. So is that thinking about it the right way, that there are people out there that are talking about a cause that I would be passionate about, but maybe I haven't actually connected into it, which is why I struggle a little bit with this experience. Do you hear
Yeah,
that often?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of people do have that association with the sales space, but to your point about cancer research, like thinking about that from the healthcare perspective and the providers, thinking about that from the patient perspective. There are folks online making content about every facet of that issue. And so thinking about it more like relational organizing online. So if you're hosting an event, what type of voices would you want to be there who aren't necessarily directly in the work yet? Who are maybe adjacent to it. If you think about it that way, like, is there a content creator who's a comfort creator for you, or like someone that you think has an interesting perspective on an issue that could be sharing content related to the work you're doing, who would be values aligned and excited about the work you're doing?
Yeah, and just to like add on to what Sabrina was saying, there are so many people making content kind of like next to the impact space without getting, very heavy into policy or encouraging their audiences to take an action. Like, for example, if we wanted to encourage people to, go vote because the environment is like on fire, maybe we'll work with like a DIY creator or like an upcycling creator, because even though they're not talking about climate change on such a consistent basis, we can already assume that a lot of their audience cares about these things because they care about sustainability and clean energy and like renewable resources in general.
Got it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like I'm beating the drum for a specific transactional event or cause as much as like I'm beating the drum to, put less junk into back into the earth and, upcycling clothes or, working with refinishing furniture to give it a second life. So that's helpful. It feels less constricted, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Like when we approach influencer marketing, we kind of see like the nonprofit organization as the messaging expert and the creator as the creative expert. And so by bringing those two people together, we can create something that has a lot of value to people online, but is also in a format that makes sense to the creator's viewers.
Great. And I know you're going to walk us through some success cases where I think you'll be able to illustrate that for us, but that's helpful because, I learn from you guys, and what I was saying is this is for me, and I'm sure a lot of organizations, a little bit of a mental shift to think about what does this actually mean? And it's often colored by our own experiences with digital, which is what, with social media, which is what I'm thinking through. But I want to just pivot a little bit and then talk about like what you guys are seeing around like next generation giving and why you're obviously seeing a lot of success with organizations that are pivoting towards developing a strategy like this and why that might be.
For sure. Yeah. So, I want to pull up this slide just to talk through like where younger generations are getting their information right now. With the rise of the internet, a lot more people are looking for spaces where they are organically to get news. And so for a lot of people like in my own generation, we don't necessarily have the income to, pay for cable to get access to news stations or pay the paywalls behind like the New York Times or different news sources, but we can get information for free from creators online as long as we know how to like fact check it and all of the things like that. And so for that reason, because people are getting all of their information online, they're getting educated online, it makes sense to push nonprofit strategy online as well. Like, for example, as some of these stats are showing, 1 in 5 Americans get their news from influencers, and that number grows, I think, to 1 in 3 members of Gen Z. People are spending a lot of time online, and people are trusting who they follow online. They're building relationships with those people and talking about creators. And when you build a relationship with someone, you're watching a lot of their content, you're more likely to take an action because they recommended you to do it. And so we see creators as trusted messengers because they have built an online audience, sustain that audience, and their audience trusts them when they are recommending certain actions. For example, like according to a GoFundMe stat or a GoFundMe report, which we'll get into a little bit later, 1 in 4 members of Gen Z has donated to a nonprofit because of an influencer's recommendation. And so it makes sense to partner with these people to get the word out. Additionally, people like people. And so when a creator is talking about something, it's easier for them to connect with them rather than just like an organization. Like putting a face to an issue helps it resonate with people a little bit more. But even though a lot of like consumption patterns are changing in terms of like where people are getting information, a lot of political organizations or advocacy organizations are not taking that into account when they're putting together their budgets for the year. This is all like US based numbers. But as you can see, the vast majority of money is still going to traditional forms of advertising like broadcast, cable, TV, radio, satellite. And even though the amount of digital is growing, it's still not really where it needs to be. And so even though like there is value in those other places where people are getting information like the TV and stuff, it just needs to be a little bit more evened out, because if we don't even it out, we're just going to continuously miss those opportunities to connect with people online.
Well, and I think if you kind of extend this chart, you can correlate some assumptions, right? So we just looked at how 1 in 5 are getting their news or from a social platform or a digital platform for, to not confuse words. But then we're seeing the spend here, and whether it's politics or advocacy or cause-based, I mean, I think really the family of what you're trying to get people to do in terms of behavior is similar. It is really surprising to say, you should at least see then 1/5 of the spend in that category, which we're clearly seeing on that happen on more traditional media outlets. And, I used to get the newspaper. I had a subscription. I liked it. And I do find it crazy that like even when I understand that younger generations aren't even getting their news from the news, it's a little nutty. But like, this is where I think we all have to learn to kind of shift some of our understandings of behavior. No, this is
Exactly. Like
super
there's so many
helpful.
creators out there that are like news-based creators, and instead of even seeing them as creators, I kind of more so see them as independent journalists, because they're doing all the same work that like traditional journalists do, where it's research, putting together a story and getting it out. And so we
Yeah.
kind of need to like reframe even like how we view creators and their value.
And
And
yeah, sorry, Sabrina, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's important to just like hammer home too that 1 in 5 getting their news off of social media is not just Gen Z. And so a lot of this is focused on Gen Z, but it is a way, social media is a way to reach all audiences. I mean, my dad's on TikTok, my grandma's on Instagram, everybody's grandma's on Facebook. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about Gen Z getting their news from these places, like it's not just them. My dad's sending me TikToks constantly about things in the news. And so, I think that is a big misconception about social media strategy, is that it's only to reach young people, and it really is a tool that can reach all kinds of audiences.
Um, that That is really a good reminder because you're right. It is definitely spanning age groups. I I see I think Jane, it's the 1 in 5 is a US stat. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the comment in the chat on the chart. And I did see this comment about, and I'm just going to mention it because maybe Ellie and Sabrina, you can talk about it in your success stories because I think it's important. But Sophie's saying that none of the charities she's worked with have felt comfortable with the concept of paying influencers to promote work. So I'd love to kind of, see how you weave that in with where we're headed next. So we've covered a little bit about the next generation of giving, and then I thought we could maybe shift on getting some expertise from you guys, like knowing you've seen the type of audience that we have with Charity Digital. Where do you even begin, maybe to build an influencer strategy as an organization? Taking Sophie's comment at the first step, maybe about selling. How do you start with selling value or proving value, and then what are the components that you need to consider on building an influencer strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. If we want to advance slides, I think that to take that initial question, yes, that is a stumbling block, and we hear that from folks, just having to wrap their head around a new strategy. But I think it's interesting how, we're okay as a movement and as organizations paying platforms for paid ads when that money is going to tech billionaires. And then, we could be investing in individual people who have built communities instead of targeting an audience on an ad, you're targeting an audience by picking the right voice and partners. And so I think a lot of that too is helping people move past the misconception we were talking about that everything to do with influencers is like transactional sales, because it really isn't. And if you're thinking about the creators that you follow in your own life, I think that you see that like you get more value from it than just recommendations for products. And so once you see it in that way, and we'll hopefully, once we get to our like success stories and case studies at the end, like you'll be able to see some of the more tangible impact, because those types of case studies also really help show like the data that this does work. Um, and so we can get more into that if there's like additional questions there. But I think that as you're thinking through the creator program, obviously generating buy-in is like the first step, but really honing in on your goal. So, if fundraising is the primary goal, great. If you have secondary goals of trying to help grow your organization's online presence, getting people to take an action like sign a petition or reach out to their representatives, things like that, like you just need to think through like the order of operations and how you're prioritizing your goals. Because if you're asking people to do too many things, the call to action is just going to get lost. So really honing in on your goal, what you want to get out of this content, and then determining who your target audience is. So you'll know that based off of, who your organization is trying to reach, but who are those people interested in? So who do you think they'd be following online? Like Vanita said, if we're talking about cancer research, are people who are interested in that, are they following doctors? Are they following maybe patient stories? And the other thing is, it doesn't just have to be who's following them. Like the algorithm helps these pieces of content reach new audiences. And so it really is just thinking about the right voice, and what kind of story you want to put behind your goal. Um, are there certain age demographics that you're trying to reach? And if so, I think that that also really impacts strategy because, like we said, this is a great way to reach Gen Z, but it's a great way to reach all audiences. It just depends on who you pick as a partner, or the team of people that you pick as a partner to collaborate with. Um, and at the end of the day, like the most important thing is that a creator's personal connection to your mission is like the number one thing. The rest of the things you can figure out. You can help boost things in an algorithm with paid ad spend. You can pull all kinds of different levers, but like at the end of the day, if you don't have a messenger who has that personal connection and is authentically aligned with your message, that inauthenticity is always going to show through the content. Or maybe a better way to say that is authenticity is always going to show through the content when it's there. And that's when you're going to see the most ROI. That's when you're going to see the best engagement, the best response in the comments, like across the board, all metrics, you're going to see the best results when you work with people who genuinely care and are excited to be doing the work. And maybe that's also a way to start breaking down some of those barriers of not feeling comfortable paying creators, because once you reach out to like one person and they're so excited about your mission, they have these new ideas, you start to see the value of even just them as a creative consultant. And so I think that's also very helpful as we've worked with nonprofits who've not done this work in the past, and they start to see like, oh, wait, like, no, this is somebody who actually is really excited about this work and open to helping us find new avenues for it. So, you also really want to think carefully about platforms, because every platform has different rules. Every platform has a different setup and algorithm. And so we'll send out these slides that'll have some more best practices about all the platforms. Don't want to get into too much of the weeds on that here, but thinking about if you've got a call to action that requires somebody to click on a link, does the platform that you're targeting have the ability to do that? So on Instagram, you can't put a link in a post unless you put paid ad spend behind it. You can put it in a story. You can put it in a link in bio. Facebook, you can add links. TikTok, there are certain guidelines on what political speech is allowed or not. And so those are just all things you want to think through and could be informed by your own organization's digital strategy and where you're getting the most traction. So if you're really trying to build your Instagram presence, then that's probably where you want to partner with creators. That makes the most sense. So that's just a really important strategic piece. I think people need to like spend adequate time thinking about before you just pull the trigger on content. And then making sure that as you're setting up your project that you can measure success. So if our goal is fundraising, really no matter what your goal is, if there's a link to click that's involved, you should be making tracked links so that you can measure performance by creator and then put that up against like, what do my conversions look like on paid ads? What do my conversions look like organically from our website? And then compare that to your influencer strategy. So you can kind of compare like what's working best. And even if you're working with multiple creators, like who among them is the most effective on this. So maybe doing some like A/B testing that way. And then going beyond just like the views and engagements, it's the easiest metric to measure because that's what the platforms feed back to us. But you should also be looking at the comments and more of the qualitative analysis of like, how is this changing minds? How is this getting people to share their own story in the comments? Is there a hashtag that was used, that's trending? Like you can measure a lot of those things. Some organizations even have access to like sentiment analysis and fancy tools like that. You don't necessarily need it. If you're able to like look through the comments, you can get a gist of like, is this resonating or not? So yeah, you just always want to make sure you can measure success. And the last thing I'll say on this is that I mentioned viewing content creators almost like creative consultants. They have a lot of expertise in the digital space and what will reach their audience best. And so I would say best practice is to really listen to their feedback and suggestions. Obviously, you're still driving the ship, so you don't have to take 100% of, every suggestion, but I think that really taking to heart the feedback that you're getting from creators is key because they are experts in their space and they'll be able to tell you like, hey, so this edit is really going to read as an ad to the audience, or it's going to read very inauthentic, or, you added all these talking points in and those are great, but it's going to make the video really long and they're not going to be able to get to the call to action at the end because it's too long. Like feedback like that is really key, because when you push back, and like don't incorporate any of that feedback, it often impacts performance because they just know what's going to do the best. And so when you're clear about your goals with the creator, they can also help you figure out the strategy that's going to work best to push that the furthest.
I'll also quickly add that I feel like when it comes to setting up a creator program, sometimes a lot of organizations are scared to let go of control because they're then partnering with someone else rather than someone from within their own organization. But like at Social Current, we approve all content before it goes live. So it's not like you're just paying someone to talk about something and then you never see the content until it's live. Like it is a very collaborative process. So you can work with the person to make sure that it makes sense for their audience and also your organization.
No, I think this is great. I mean, there's so much here to consider, and I see a lot of fascinating questions coming through in the Q&A. So get ready for that. But I would then, maybe we can just pivot to have you guys talking about some success stories with some of the organizations that you've worked with. I think that what's coming across kind of loud and clear is that organizations are probably more in a position to lift and convince, right? Or you have to kind of sell the efficacy or sell the reasons why. So would love to kind of have you provide some insight into what you've seen work with some of your clients and customers.
For sure. Yes, we have a case study here where we worked with a creator named Jess Craven to encourage people to donate to a campaign that was going on in Florida. And I'll walk through like some of our different, I guess, like intentions around working with Jess specifically. So the first thing is Jess, we want to work with Jess because she was the right partner for a lot of different reasons. One, she is always talking about politics and news and progressive issues. And so we already knew that her audience was bought into the progressive cause. And we didn't have to like persuade them or anything like that because they were already bought in. And so it made sense to work with her to talk about a progressive candidate. Also, Jess is a creator that is always providing opportunities for her audience to take action around certain things. Like, for example, she's always sharing petitions, she's always sharing rallies that people can attend. And so people follow her because they're already looking to get engaged on different topics. And so, for that reason, we knew working with Jess would be really great to help drive donations to this campaign as well as volunteers to this campaign. And we worked with her on a few different things since she has different audiences in different places. So we worked with her first on short form content where her audience tended to be a little bit younger. So we worked with her on just a short form video to explain all about the candidate's campaign, why she was running for office, and everything like that. And that was put out on her TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube pages, just the same video posted to all three. I also think like working with someone to post to all platforms makes sense because every platform has kind of a different amount or a different number or like different demographics using each platform. Like Instagram Reels and TikTok, for example, might skew like more female, whereas YouTube might be more male. So things like that. And in addition to the short form content, we also worked with her on a Substack post. So sending out a newsletter to her community. And in that newsletter, her audience tended to be a little bit older. And the great thing about working on a newsletter is, like Sabrina was talking about before, it's just a little bit easier to make that click rather than having to watch the video and then go to her bio and donate through there. And so by working with Jess, we were able to reach a bunch of different audiences, even though she only put together one piece of content and then just added in some extra words above for the newsletter. In addition to that, this is something that we didn't do mainly for budget constraints, but that we wanted to do. This campaign was happening in Florida. Jess is a California-based creator, but she knew that if she mentioned Florida in her content, it would then slightly be pushed to people that live in Florida. And our idea to help get out the word further in Florida, encourage people in that candidate's district even to get involved, would be to like partner with creators that are local to that area and are creating content around that area. So for like, you don't always need to partner with someone already talking about progressive issues, but you can always partner with someone mainly just based on who their audience is. So to help get this content out to a Florida audience, we could have partnered with someone who creates content about like things to do in Florida, for example, like what you want to eat in Florida or like random events happening in Florida, because we can assume that the majority of their audience is Florida based as they're talking about different Florida opportunities. So yeah, that was just one quick success story where we worked with Jess because she was a great partner, got stuff up on a bunch of different platforms to reach different groups of people. And it would have been a little bit more targeted if we were able to do some local amplification, but I think that's a lesson we'd want to implement on the next one.
So can I ask a couple of questions on this?
Yes.
So what was the call to action then for the recipients of this?
The call to action was to get involved in whatever way, get involved in this campaign in whatever means necessary. So we included two different call to actions depending on people's like time and money commitment, like availabilities, I guess. So for people who weren't able to donate financially, we offered them the opportunity to volunteer. And then for people who could make a small donation, they could make a donation directly to that page. And through both of these call to actions, I think she got like a few thousand clicks on each. So people were really engaged by the content.
And then I think, because I know, we have a heavy, primarily UK-based audience, and we talked about this a little bit, but I think this is it's a great example where you can kind of pull out the geography, right? And pull out the kind of electable pieces of this, but say that here is a creator who focuses on progressive issues and has a progressive base. And if you are a nonprofit that's focused on a progressive issue, she might have the right audience that you would want to get content put out by someone like this about your cause that could be about signing up to volunteer for an event or highlighting something that might be passing through some sort of advocacy phase or, making a donation, right? Like that's how I should think about this as a more like holistic use case.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll work with different people for like different goals depending on what the campaign is. Like for example, if we want to educate an audience about something that they may not have heard about before or persuade them to change their beliefs about something, we'll work with someone that's never talked about it before in the past, but might have some sort of lived experience that they feel comfortable sharing online. If we want people online to take an action, whether it's a donation or signing a petition or signing up for a newsletter, for example, we'll work with someone that we already know has audiences bought into that issue, because then it's a little bit easier to get them to take that next step, whether it's a petition, donation, whatever.
Yeah, and I love the example of the local amplification because I wouldn't have thought about that to say, okay, if I'm like, I can actually go get, someone who's like writing about food in a certain area, right? Who's like has a known foodie following for a geography to bring attention to things that might be happening within that geography. Because obviously people are caring and following along. And I really like that example about how it actually has nothing to do with the cause or the mission, but you're getting it in front of the people that are in the area where there is an impact, or right, or there is a reason to care potentially.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's even just like one way to target it. Another thing that a lot of organizations do is they'll put like ad spend behind the creator's content and boost it. And that way they can even target it further. So like integrating a few different digital strategies that you all are already working on is a good way to like just target it further.
No, this was great. Super helpful. And this video looks pretty funny. So I'm gonna have to go watch it later, whatever she's doing in that middle
Yeah,
section.
she makes fun of Matt Gates, which is pretty easy to do. So
Fantastic. So I think I think we're moving into Q&A. So we can, Lisa, can we bounce
Yeah.
over to her? I could talk about this all day, but I want to make sure
No, absolutely.
time.
But great. Well, thank you very much for your time and for obviously all the tips that you shared, especially coming from a small charity perspective and also from great examples of local influencers. I think that there was some great takeaways here. And without further ado, I'll get straight into questions. And we received quite a few. And obviously, we have about 15 minutes. So please do feel free to ask even more question in the Q&A chat. So I'll go with the first one, question from Emma, who can see how influencer marketing can help raise awareness of a charity, but if the followers are of the same age group, really. So Emma would like a little bit more details about how can this benefit fundraising if the follower group might not be the best to target for donation, i.e. perhaps I don't know, because of their age or because of their location. I don't know. So can you help perhaps Emma with some tips on how to, how this influencer marketing can benefit fundraising and can help reach the right people that will end up giving money?
I think I want to say this based on what I learned today, which was a couple of things. So you, Sabrina and Ellie can test me, but I think one of the points that I saw was that we shouldn't assume that like influencers are only targeting a certain age group, right? To Sabrina's point, her dad's on TikTok, her grandma's on Facebook. Like we are reaching a wider audience, and that you can begin to split out calls to action. So maybe there is a certain influencer that you could target that has a following that might be more inclined to donate versus another following that might be more inclined to volunteer and show up. But that's what I took away. Sabrina and Ellie, keep me honest or correct me or redirect me.
No, yeah, I think you're completely right in that. I'll also add that we see influencer marketing as like a long-term play. And we kind of view it more so as, like Sabrina was saying before, like digital organizing rather than like influencer marketing. Like we don't like to compare influencer marketing to like a paid ad. And so when it comes to working with influencers, like we recommend you to start with value first and then have the donation be an ask maybe even a little bit later down the line when there is a pressing moment. There's only so much nuance a creator can get into in like a 30 to 60-second video. But if you work with them on multiple pieces of content over a long period of time, you're slowly getting their audience more bought into the issue that your organization does. And so when there's like a rapid response moment or a breaking news moment that a lot of people want to take action around, their audience is then already primed to donate because they've been hearing about the work that your organization has done for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
And to briefly add to that, I would just say that, the platforms give creators a lot of data about their audience. And so you can always ask if you have somebody in mind who you think would be a really great ambassador for your work, and you want to partner with them on social media, you can reach out to them. And if they're open to sending you that data, I mean, you can see their audience breakdown by age, by where they're located. So sometimes we'll do that when we're, looking for somebody and we know, oh, well, they have a very international audience. Do they have enough of a US based audience to meet the needs of this client? So those are all things that you can get from the creators to also help inform that decision, without having to make a lot of assumptions about who their audience would be.
Yeah,
I'll also
absolutely.
add that like this isn't directly related to donating, obviously, but going back to like the sales conversation around influencer marketing we were happening before, like influencers are always already recommending products to their audience to buy, and so many people are recommended to buy products because they heard an influencer talking about it. And so we can kind of like relate that to fundraising as well. And where they can encourage their audience to take like a specific action around a cause too.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thanks very much to you three. Moving on to the next question from Timothy. As a charity with limited funds, spending on getting eyes on us has to be carefully considered, they say. Facebook is still the largest social media platform, and their ad system is reasonably priced and highly targeted to the demographic their organizations wants to reach. So Timothy is asking, how do you think this compares to the use of influencers in terms of reach and cost effectiveness?
Yeah, I can hop in here. I think this also relates a bit to Sarah's question about the average cost. And that's a huge question of, how much does this cost? How does it compare to what we're already doing? And so the answer is that it definitely ranges, because people have all different sizes of followings, all different rates of engagement. And so those are kind of the things that you want to look at when you're deciding what you can make an offer to an influencer. But so in terms of Facebook ads, as Ellie mentioned, like paid ads and influencer content isn't quite apples to apples. They're definitely like different lanes, but they do have a lot of overlap. And so if you're seeing good success on Facebook ads, my recommendation would probably be to try to find a creator who has that right voice and personal experience to make a user-generated video and try that out on your ads as well. And so working with them to create content that reads as a more conversational ask than, generally ads that you're going to put on Facebook are more produced. or even just like a static image that somebody scrolls past. So I would try that, especially if you're already seeing good success there. Like there are definitely ways to integrate influencer creator strategy into work you're already doing instead of having to fully reinvent the wheel and just test and see what's working better, because it's going to be different for every organization. And, you know, depending on what your mission is and what your message is, like who those messengers should be for you and where you want to partner with them. But often we'll work with folks to create a piece of content that goes out on their live channels. And then you can also talk to the creator about having usage or ad rights on that as well, so that you could use it on your paid ads. On Meta, this works. On Instagram, it works similarly, where you can partner with the original poster, so it would look like a collab post. And then that's where you get that direct like click call to action. So those are both ways that I think you can leverage creator work in your paid ad strategy as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. I don't know if Ellie or Venita, you want to add more to that? Nope.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Moving on to the next question. Georgia is asking, do you have any advice for how to pitch an idea to an influencer, and what are they typically looking for in a partnership?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can get started here. One thing that we've been doing lately is we will meet with a creator, talk through the general messaging of the campaign, we'll talk through our general goals, and then we'll say to them, like, what do you think would be the most impactful here? Like they're experts at growing an online audience. They're experts at persuading their audience to take certain actions. And so you really need to incorporate like that digital expertise when thinking through what the creative content could look like. Like, for example, we have been working with a creator focused newsletter that's in partnership with one of the organizations we work with. And we'll put out a lot of data around polling and different beliefs happening in the US. And then there's a button at the bottom where creators can pitch themselves to come up with a creative concept to talk about that on their own page. So I'd encourage you to let it be as creator led as possible. We really try to discourage from like, you know, giving a creator a specific script that you want them to follow. I would also look at what content the creator is organically putting out and trying to figure out a way that you can weave your campaign's messaging into that existing content. Like, for example, if you want to work with a chef to talk about food insecurity, and a lot of their content is just like cooking with voiceovers, maybe they can be cooking and then include some of the messaging from your organization as they're cooking. And so it's not just like a random direct to camera video that doesn't make sense on their page since they've never done that in the past. Similarly, if you want to work with like a makeup creator, maybe it's like a get ready with me as I talk about XYZ. So yeah, so my two tips here are: one, let the creator pitch their own ideas for your campaign, and two, look at what already is going out on their page.
And to briefly add just to the logistics of that, so if you find a creator that you want to work with, they will often have their email in their bio across platforms. There's a couple tricks to finding it if it's not immediately available to you. If they've got a YouTube, you can usually find it that way. And sometimes if they've got a business page on Facebook, you can find it that way. So you want to do some sort of inbound outreach to them if you're not already connected. And they'll want information about your goals, your messaging. They will often ask about budget, so you can be upfront with what you have available, or you can ask them for their rates. That's a very like normal question to ask. And so that will be like what they're looking for upfront, as well as your idea of timeline and how quickly you need content to go out. Generally, content creators need anywhere from like a week to 2 weeks for short form content. Some can work quicker than that, but that's just like a general rule of thumb. And so they'll be looking for all of that like logistic information in the beginning in order to make a commitment to be able to do the campaign.
Super. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you both. And obviously, I know you alluded to it, Sabrina, just now, but could you, well, obviously it's from a US perspective, but could you be telling us what is the average cost of partnering with an influencer, or if you have any, sort of indication, obviously bearing in mind that it might be more US based?
Yeah, all of my
Oh, yeah.
all of my references will be in dollars, so apologies if you all have to convert. But it really, really, really
Mm,
ranges. There are some collaborations that can be as low as like $400, and that would be probably with like a very, very small creator. And we've received pitches up to like $60,000. So there's a huge, huge
mm,
range. Um, I would say that most creators we work with are in like the 2,000 to 3,000 range. And we try to work with like mid-size creators, which we define as like 50,000 to 250,000 followers on Instagram and 500,000 followers to a million on TikTok. And the
mhm,
reason we like working the most with mid-size creators is because they are able to prioritize like both like high reach and high engagement.
mhm.
Smaller creators tend to get higher engagement,
Yeah.
whereas bigger creators tend to get higher reach. And so working with mid-sized creators in that like 2,000 to 3,000 range is usually able to like take advantage of both of those two things.
And we can share our impact report as well,
Mhm,
where we did a lot of analysis on our average payouts by the size of creator per platform. And so we can share that afterwards with all of the follow-up materials. But the average payouts ranged anywhere from 1,000 to about 3,000, like Ellie mentioned, just depending on the deliverable type and then the size of the creator. So we've got that broken out for you, as well as what that looks like by creator niche, because sometimes political creators versus lifestyle creators have some different rates as well. But generally, we'll just flag sometimes creator rates can really range, like Ellie mentioned. Some are more realistic than others. And so it really is just a matter of finding the right values aligned partner who's also willing to work with you on the scope that you have available. But you definitely want to pay creators to do this work. I think that some organizations will be able to like ask for favors, and that's great, you know, in the short term, but to really build that relationship and make it
mm,
sustainable, you want to try to put some budget behind it in the same way that you would have anybody working on your team. You wouldn't be asking them to do that for free, because it takes more work and effort than you might assume. So
I'll
super.
also add that
Mm,
95% of creators make under $50,000 a year. And so it's a very, very small amount of people that are going to have crazy budgets. Like the vast, vast majority of people see creator work as like a side hustle in addition to their 9 to 5 job. And so a lot of things like that can influence the rates that people set for themselves, like how much editing time goes into the content, how much free time they have, and even like how much they want to prioritize that partnership based on their relationship with your
mm,
organization.
sure. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And we'll probably have time for one more question, which is actually having sharing some tips when some of our attendees are having discussions with more senior colleagues who are able to sign off on approaches such as this and who may be reluctant or risk avoidant. So how might you suggest opening up the conversation about implementing a strategy or just researching a strategy? What should we be saying to our senior leadership team and trustees, basically?
Yeah, I can start here. I think a lot of it goes back to consumption patterns of where people are. Like I can go back to that slide we had before. Like people are online, so we need to really meet them where
Mm,
they are organically. And the way that traditional media has existed for so long is just going to be like increasingly less relevant to people. And so we really need to just be meeting people where they are in terms of like risk adverse. There's a few things we do to like protect organizations and the creator from like anything, I guess, going wrong, I guess.
mm,
Like I was saying before, like we will approve all content before it goes live. We'll fact check everything, make sure we're not spreading any like misinformation or
information.
anything like that. And we also use this AI vet service called Ferretly, where you can go through the pages of creators and make sure that there's no existing like hate speech or anything like that on their pages. And you can like even put in your own words to see if they've like talked about different topics on their social medias before. And so you can make sure that like you are working 100% with a mission aligned creator. But I'll pass
Yeah.
it to Anita and Sabrina if they have anything else to add here.
Just to quickly add to whoever had asked this question, I popped a resource in the Q&A where you can type in an answer for some of these stats on the UK side of things, because really just being able to show the data of like where folks are getting news and the social state of giving stuff, like all of that is really helpful to be able to put in front of them. As we know, like a lot of the senior leadership team is very data driven, as they should be, but there is data to support that this is an effective tactic to use. So I think that sharing anything like that, it looked like in the UK, 7 in 10 say that they consume online news in some capacity. So folks who are looking to, learn more about different topics. And so that's a really fertile ground. I think there was a question maybe earlier as well about like whether the UK influencer space is as developed as the United States. And it might not be quite as developed, but that also means that you can get the jump on it because as things are moving in this direction, more people are online. And older generations as well, as that report that I dropped like also shows. I think you can show the trends and where things are moving. You can be ahead of that curve. And I think that the idea of being a leader in that space is also pretty attractive to senior leadership if it's a new tactic that you can show is actually working elsewhere.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you very much to the three of you, because that's all we've got time for today. It's just bang on 2 p.m. So thank you so much, Benita, Ellie, and Sabrina, and thank you to every one of you who attended and stuck through to the question section. So yeah, it's been really great welcoming you, and thank you. Hope our attendees enjoyed and got a few tips. And then as we're wrapping up, just to let you know that our next webinar will be next week at 1 p.m. and will be on how to switch to a new finance system stress-free, with Accounts IQ. So if you have any finance manager colleagues who might be interested in joining that free webinar, please do feel free to share that with them. If you could share feedback with us on this session, that would be fantastic. We've posted the link in the chat, and you will also receive a prompt just after you leave this page. So thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much to all three esteemed guests for today's, and we really hope that you have a great rest of the week. Thank you.